Okay, Jamie, so we're here to discuss your lesson today. And so our goal for this conference is to look at your lesson, to review what you asked me to look at today, and what you asked me to look at was student engagement. And so you did a social studies lesson, and we were looking at a target of it was looking at Native American language groups, and then the tribes that were associated in those groups, and then you asked me to specifically look at the student engagement during that lesson. Okay, and so we're going to just discuss what you think. How do you think the lesson went?
I think it went really well. I know I lost them a little bit in the beginning when I was just talking and reading through the first paragraph of the handout. But they were engaged in the very beginning with the giant Virginia map. And they all raised their hands, they had their hands up, and they wanted to help put the language groups, not language groups, the tribes on the map and the regions on the map.
See you later.
They really like that. And I did really well doing that.
What stood out to you the most in your lesson, do you think?
When we got to fact and opinion, Rylan, I was very, not shocked, but I was amazed that he got quickly that saying George Washington thought America was the best country is a fact, and not a lot of his classmates quite got it, but he was very quick to raise his hand, and it's a fact because he thought it and he knew it, and just went on explaining that. And I think that was a good part of the lesson.
Okay. Would you like to see some of the observation data that I collected today?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I did a selective scripting, and I tried to focus mostly on the student engagement piece, but there was quite a bit, so I hope it's not overwhelming to you.
Well, it looks like every time I asked them a question, they were responding. And I didn't have to call on a lot of them. They had their hands up. When Rylan shared. I think this is really good.
Are there any patterns that you see in the data?
They were engaging with each other. I noticed that I would ask a question and then they would play off each other a few times. Shane had something to say, then Layla piggybacked off that. I noticed I call on Shane a lot, and Amari. But I realized that because a lot of times, since they're right at the front, they're with me more, I have them. And so they always have their hands up because they're right there and listening. The same with Layla and Celeste, they're right up front. So I notice I need to work more on getting the ones in the back, the kids that sit in the back. if I call them, they will give me an answer, but I don't get a lot of their hands raised.
What do you think this data tells you about the students' behavior and their learning?
They need to be, this group, they need the extra, I think the extra engagement, because when I do have them, when it's just me and I'm talking, I lose them. But if I have...
Which ones are you losing?
I'm losing the ones in the back mostly.
Okay.
The ones up front, I have their attention. But I think with me, I need to, move around the classroom more if I'm talking, not stand right up front and read off what I'm doing. I need to go stand near Alex's group or Johnny's group. So not just stand in the same place. But when I have all their hands up, they all want to share when I want them to write on the board, or I have things to stick on maps, because that gets them up and they get to do something.
So what I hear you saying is when it's very interactive, you've got the class, like the majority of them engaged, but it's when you shift the focus. Do you feel like that's correct? That
Yes.
When you shift the focus away from something that's very interactive, then you might be losing certain segments of the class.
Yes.
What would it look like if you positioned yourself in a different place in the classroom?
If I put myself in the back, say by Johnny's desk, then I'll have them, because I'm close to them, they know they need to look at me. If I'm over on the other side, I might lose them again, but I'll have Alex's group. And usually they're the ones I have to go, if I'm just talking, then I have to call on them, Dayton, what do you think, Camilla? So different spots I'll get more of the groups that I'm losing.
Okay. I did notice that you began the lesson by drawing your students back to their prior knowledge. What do they know about the regions and the language groups? I noticed that you modeled with the students when you did the shared reading, and you were very patient. You reiterated directions when you were going through the various activities, and you did a closure activity for the students to make sure that you understood what they needed further information from. So what do you think, by examining this, or by examining their exit ticket for their closure, what do you think that you will learn from examining that?
Moving forward, what they need work on. I know moving forward we're doing review for a test, and so the exit ticket, I asked, what's one thing that we've been learning that you're unsure of, or you need extra help with? And a lot of them, it was the language groups or just the tribe names. So I know going into tomorrow and the next day with review, do more with the tribal groups, do more with the language groups.
Was there anything surprising to you in this data? Did anything stand out as very interesting or really surprising?
I mentioned it before, Shane and Amari's names pop up a lot more than the rest of the students. I think I asked a question here, and seeing the responses that you wrote, a few students nod, Dayton's organizing his desk. Layla has her head on the desk. Chris is playing with pencil. I see that even though I've asked a question, I don't have their full attention.
So, in the future, what do you think that you might be able to do to get their full attention?
Maybe incorporate some more active lessons in it, like having them stand, and if it's a yes or no question, yes, have them do arm punches or do four corners. So you really have to listen with that to know where you're going to go and make sure you're in the right corner or where you need to be.
So what I've heard you suggest is some things that you can incorporate into your lessons in the future, having seen what happened today, and then you can say, well, these are areas that could be a challenge for the students. It was a long lesson, and it's relatively new material, and it's difficult for them, and so what you've come up with is an idea to help them work through some of their own challenges. Was there any accommodation or differentiation that you had to make in this lesson for any particular students?
I don't think so. If I did, I don't remember it. I know they worked in their table groups, and I know the table groups are mixed, so you may have a high student, may have a low student working in the table groups. The low students benefiting and from the high students helping, and I think that's a bit of differentiation.
Do you think that's a benefit for the students,
I do.
that they work that way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that is that Kagan strategy that we've built into the classroom, so that they sit in those groups like that. Okay. Moving ahead, what feedback do you have about the work that we do together? Is there any kind of feedback that you can give to me about how our interaction is?
I think it's been working pretty good. I know when I'm lead teacher, I may not, I have my lesson, but there may be something that you need the students to pay more attention to. So I like that you jump in on the occasion and be like, well, students, let's draw our attention to this, or that's very interesting what Miss Whittaker said, let's talk about that more. And that helps me because I realize, oh, there's something I need to work on, or there's something, I need to add in for the next lesson.
Or it could be that I've taught this material before, and I know how things are presented to them. And so we talked about that it's hopefully it doesn't come across as a negative. It's just, I've heard these words before, and I know that there's a particular vocabulary word or a type of question that might come at them. So, yeah. How do you think that I can support you in the next, now we're only going to be together for the next 4 days, so how can I best support you in the next 4 days that we're together?
The feedback that you've been doing on the lessons, because I know I know after every lesson you're really good with asking, so how do you think that went? And that helps me, because I need to keep thinking about, did it go all right? Is there any changes that need to be made? I think that's it. I'm not sure what else.
Okay, yeah, I think that's great. I did have a couple of suggestions, and I think you actually hit on one of them. One of the things that I would say would be to make sure you set your target for the day. And so that helps the students to understand the purpose of the lesson, and we're really good as adults for understanding what we're doing, but sometimes they don't. So what do you think your lesson would sound like if you started with that objective or that learning target at the beginning of the lesson?
They know what to focus on. So today's lesson was the language groups and the tribes, so and fact and opinion as well. So just letting them know that, let's look at this, I can differentiate between fact and opinion. It gets them thinking, okay, we're going to continue with fact and opinion today. Remember, there's an anchor chart up in the wall. They know where, up on the wall, they know where that is. And also with the language groups, because they've been working on that the past week, they know they can, maybe that triggers something in them that like, oh, I remember yesterday we did this, or the day before, you know. So if we let them know ahead of time, so they can start already thinking, okay, well, what are we doing today with that?
And I do agree. I think that's a really great idea to draw their attention back to those anchor charts, because those are, they're kind of embedded in them, and they will turn to those spots when they have a question, and they'll be looking for them. And so that's a great idea to draw their attention back to that. And then another thing that I would consider is what you mentioned before, is getting those movement activities, whether it's a Kagan strategy or just an active type of a lesson with the yes, no, up, down, the four corners, jumping jacks, whatever it is. Even breaking up the lesson into segments at certain points, say, okay, let's stop and check to see how our understanding is, and working in that movement activity. And I think you recognize that those are some areas that we could work in as well. And then the only other thing that I thought was, when you're doing, because we're doing the cross-curricular units, we have all of our reading goals and our writing goals embedded into our science and social studies. And so what you can do, this is just a suggestion, is to make sure that as you're teaching that fact and opinion, to just kind of help them understand that this is embedded into their curriculum. And so draw their attention back to that concept map and say, okay, now this is our fact and opinion piece that we're going to be working on. So I think, you know, you've done a really good job of recognizing what your strengths are and what some of your challenges are, and that's a really difficult thing to do. Is there anything else that you would like to share? What are your thoughts about next time? Because tomorrow you've got a full day as well. Anything that comes to mind?
That I need to finish up, finalize the math lesson plan. That's what I'm thinking right now. But nothing else, I don't think.
Do you think that you will want to incorporate some of the things that you recognize today into tomorrow's plan?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it. I think today went really well. It was a good day. It was a lot of lessons, a lot of material, but I think the day went well, and I hope that you feel that success as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.